Imagine walking into a bank, right? Like a traditional brick and mortar bank. You have $0 to your name.
Okay, not a great start.
Right, terrible start. But you walk up to the teller and you ask to borrow $10 million. No credit check, no collateral, nothing.
They probably just call security immediately.
Exactly. But let's say they give it to you. You walk out, buy a massive commercial property across the street, flip it to a buyer on the corner for a $50,000 profit, and then walk back into the bank to pay off the $10 million loan. And you do all of this in like less than 1 second.
Yeah, in the legacy financial world, that is literally impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, the counterparty risk alone, you'd have so many moving parts, so much latency. It's science fiction.
It is. But on the blockchain, that exact sequence of events isn't just possible. It happens thousands of times a day.
It does. And it's all thanks to the architecture of decentralized finance. DeFi allows for that kind of atomic execution.
Atomic execution. Okay, break that down for me real quick.
So we're talking about a system where all those steps you just mentioned are bundled into a single block of data on the chain. Meaning if every single condition of that crazy real estate flip isn't met perfectly, like if the buyer backs out at the last microsecond, the entire transaction just reverts.
Oh, so the initial loan basically never even happened.
Exactly. The loan is canceled.
Yeah.
The risk for the lender is mathematically eliminated by the code itself.
Wow. And that wild concept is exactly what we are digging into for this deep dive. So for you listening right now, our mission today is to decode this massive stack of source materials, white papers, and technical decks we got our hands on.
And they are dense, very dense materials.
Super dense. They detail this entirely new ecosystem called Aurum. Now, I'm coming at this as, someone who tracks these massive shifts in digital finance. I really want to figure out how the actual gears turn here.
Right.
Because we want to know what happens when you combine artificial intelligence, automated arbitrage, and blockchain architecture into one synchronized machine.
Yeah, and just to set the stage for you listening, our objective today is to impartially examine the mechanics of Aurum. We are looking at this exactly as it's presented in their documentation.
Right. No hype, just the facts.
Exactly. We are breaking down the math, the tokenomics, and the technology to see how it all functions. We're not endorsing it, and this definitely isn't financial advice. We're just analyzing the engine they've built to navigate this highly complex corner of the market.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because before we get to the AI or the flash loan mechanics, which is the really crazy stuff, we have to start with the foundational layer.
You always have to start with the base currency.
Right. Every ecosystem needs one, and here it's the Aurum token. The documents define it as this versatile utility asset that basically drives the whole ecosystem. But the first technical spec that jumps out at me is where it lives. It's built on the Polygon blockchain.
Yeah, and Polygon is a very deliberate choice for this specific type of infrastructure. It's not just a random selection.
Why is that?
Well, when you are building a platform that relies so heavily on algorithmic trading, arbitrage, and just constant interaction with smart contracts, the underlying network basically dictates your success or failure.
Because the fees.
Exactly. I mean, Ethereum is the base layer for most of this liquidity, right? But Ethereum's base layer is notoriously congested.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're trying to execute a high-frequency arbitrage trade where your profit margin is maybe like a tiny fraction of a percent, a $50 gas fee on Ethereum instantly turns a winning trade into a massive loss.
It completely destroys the math. You just can't do micro arbitrage on a congested layer 1 network.
Yeah.
So Polygon is a layer 2 scaling solution. It runs parallel to Ethereum.
Kind of like an express lane.
Yeah, a toll-free express lane. It processes transactions off the main chain and batches them together, so that drops the gas fees to fractions of a cent while maintaining extremely high transaction speeds.
Which you need if you have an AI bot making hundreds of trades.
Right. For an AI algorithm that needs to scan decentralized exchanges and execute multiple smart contract calls every single minute, utilizing a low-fee environment like Polygon isn't just a preference. It is a strict technical prerequisite. The whole model breaks down without it.
Okay, that makes total sense. Now, the other core metric for the token that caught my eye is the supply. They've hard capped it at exactly 100 million tokens.
Which is relatively small in the crypto world.
Right. In a space where we constantly see protocols minting billions or like trillions of tokens just to artificially deflate the price so it looks cheap to retail buyers, 100 million is actually quite restrictive.
It is. And it creates a baseline of absolute scarcity. In smart contract ecosystems, a hard cap written directly into the protocol means the developers cannot arbitrarily inflate the supply later on to cover their operational deficits.
They can't just print more money to bail themselves out.
Exactly. The 100 million ceiling forces the ecosystem to generate value through actual utility, rather than just inflation. And this cap is the critical variable in the entire economic model, which we really need to look at next.
Yeah, let's get into that, because we need to look at how those 100 million tokens are actually distributed. Looking at the allocation pie chart in these sources, it is aggressively skewed.
It really is.
So let me read this breakdown for you listening. 50% of the entire supply is reserved for what they call license purchases. 25% is for staking incentives, 10% for marketing, 10% for development, and only 5% for the team.
Right, only 5%.
Okay, I am going to push back on this setup right away. A 5% team allocation sounds great for PR. You know, it looks highly decentralized and fair to the community.
It does. It plays very well on Twitter.
Exactly. But from a purely operational standpoint, if the founders only hold 5% of the supply, do they actually have the financial incentive to maintain and upgrade this highly complex AI protocol 3 or 4 years down the line?
That's the classic founder's dilemma in Web3.
Right. In traditional tech startups, founders retain massive equity because you want them financially locked into solving the hardest problems. If they only have 5%, what stops them from just abandoning ship at the first sign of a bear market?
It's a very valid critique. That concern about long-term developer retention is brought up constantly with these highly distributed projects. However, what's fascinating here is how that 5% functions in tandem with the broader tokenomics.
How do you mean?
Well, the team isn't relying on a massive reserve to dump on retail buyers for liquidity. They are relying on the actual revenue generation of the ecosystem itself.
Because of that massive 50% chunk reserved for licenses.
Yes, that 50% is tied directly to a permanent deflationary burn mechanism.
Okay, walk me through that.
So, the documents state that every single time a user purchases an Aurum license, which, by the way, is the access key you need for the AI, they have to pay in Aurum tokens.
Makes sense.
But here's the kicker. The smart contract immediately routes 50% of those specific tokens into a burn address.
Oh, wow. So it's essentially a black hole wallet, no private keys, nobody can access it.
Right. Once the tokens hit that contract, they are mathematically removed from the circulating supply forever.
They just cease to exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we connect this back to your concern about developer incentives, the team's 5% becomes increasingly valuable purely as a function of network usage.
Oh, I see. They don't need a 30% allocation to make a massive profit if the total supply of the token is violently shrinking.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Every time the platform is utilized, every time someone buys a license, the denominator of total tokens shrinks.
So the total supply is actively ticking down from that 100 million cap. And at the exact same time, the only way those tokens are being burned is if people are actively buying licenses, which means demand is going up.
It is the textbook definition of a deflationary feedback loop. You have a shrinking supply intersecting with rising demand. And crucially, it's driven by active utility rather than just pure speculation.
That is really clever. But the protocol doesn't just leave that value discovery up to the open market, right? Because the open market in crypto is notoriously inefficient.
Especially in the early stages of a project, it's usually chaos.
Yeah, the early days of a token launch on an AMM, like an automated market maker, it's usually a bloodbath. You have MEV bots, front-running retail buyers, extreme volatility, massive liquidity swings. But Aurum's documentation outlines a very rigid internal growth model to bypass that completely.
Yes, the price staircase.
Right. They have tied the internal price of the token directly to the fiat value of license sales. The sources lay out this program staircase, so it starts at about 51 cents when they hit $1 million in license sales. Then it steps up incrementally. At 10 million in sales, it goes to 62 cents. At 30 million, the price is mapped to roughly 81 cents. At 60 million, it's $1.12. And the final step on this internal ladder is $1.25 when they hit 90 million in total ecosystem sales.
It's a very controlled expansion. By tying the price growth strictly to real-world capital inflow, specifically tracking those $1 million revenue increments, the architecture is attempting to shield early participants from the chaos of those algorithmic market makers we just talked about.
Right, because you aren't fighting a trading bot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The token's value is insulated from, like, Twitter sentiment or broader macroeconomic panic. Its internal price is a direct reflection of platform revenue.
But there is another metric woven into this staircase that confused me at first. The documents state that for every $1 million in license sales, the token supply actually expands by 2.5%.
Yes, the supply expansion.
Wait, how does that square with the 50% burn mechanism we just talked about? You have the protocol aggressively burning tokens on one end, but then expanding the circulating supply by 2.5% at every revenue milestone on the other end. That feels contradictory.
It does seem that way at first glance, but it's actually an internal balancing of the liquidity pools.
Okay, explain that.
Well, think about it. If a protocol only burns tokens and never injects fresh liquidity, you eventually face a liquidity crisis. The asset becomes too scarce to actually trade or to utilize for onboarding new users. You price everyone out.
Oh, because there are literally no tokens available to buy the license.
Right. So the 2.5% expansion releases controlled amounts of that reserve supply into circulation. It meets the growing demand, but it only does so at higher and higher price points, as mapped on that staircase you mentioned.
I see. So it's basically a throttling mechanism.
Exactly. It ensures there is sufficient liquidity for new users to enter the ecosystem, but forces them to enter at a premium that reflects the established value of the network.
That makes a lot of sense. And the documents are clear that this controlled environment is just a temporary bootstrapping phase, right?
Yes. Once the licenses are sold out and the internal staircase reaches that final $1.25 tier, Aurum transitions to major public exchanges for broader market access.
So they basically use this internal bonding curve model to build a stable, multi-million-dollar treasury floor. And then, once they have a massive user base, proven revenue, and a hardened protocol, then they expose it to the wild west of the open market.
Which is a much safer way to launch.
All of this economic theory is incredibly tight. I mean, the burn mechanism forces scarcity, the staircase enforces stability, but none of this matters if the underlying product doesn't actually generate the revenue required to move up that staircase.
Right. The tech has to work.
Exactly. Users are buying these licenses to access a specific piece of technology, and the documents call it Aurum Flash.
Aurum Flash is the core engine of everything we are talking about today. Everything else we've discussed so far, the tokenomics, the Polygon chain, that's just the chassis and the fuel lines.
So let's talk about the engine.
To understand the magnitude of what this engine does, we really have to look at the liquidity environment it operates within. So, total value locked-in decentralized finance, or TVL, is currently hovering in the hundreds of billions of dollars.
That is a staggering amount of capital.
It is. We are talking about massive pools of decentralized capital, and a very significant portion of that capital resides in lending protocols, specifically one called AAVE.
Right. The sources highlight AAVE as the foundational vault for this entire operation. So just for you listening, AAVE is basically this massive, decentralized, over-collateralized lending mega protocol.
Yep, that's a good way to describe it.
It's heavily audited, it holds billions of dollars, and it operates entirely via smart contracts without any bank managers or middlemen.
And crucially, AAVE supports those atomic transactions we discussed at the very beginning of the deep dive, the flash loan.
Right, the bank robbery analogy where you give the money back before the teller even blinks. So the sources lay out exactly how the Aurum Flash AI weaponizes these flash loans across 5 distinct steps. Let's go through them.
Let's do it.
Step 1 is AI market opportunity identification. The algorithm basically scans decentralized exchanges to identify arbitrage opportunities.
And this is where the AI component is absolutely critical. I mean, arbitrage is an ancient financial concept, right? Buy low in one market, sell high in another market.
People have been doing it with physical goods for centuries.
Exactly. But in DeFi, liquidity is incredibly fragmented across hundreds of different decentralized exchanges, or DXs. You have Uniswap, SushiSwap, QuickSwap, and they're all running their own automated market maker formulas.
So they don't share a centralized price feed?
No, they don't. Because they're decentralized and rely on local pool ratios rather than the centralized Wall Street order book, the price of an asset can briefly decouple between 2 different platforms.
Okay, so a specific token might be priced at, say, $1,000 on Uniswap, but it's $1,005 on SushiSwap just because of a sudden localized trade on that platform.
Yes, but that $5 spread only exists for a matter of seconds, sometimes just milliseconds. And then specialized searcher bots or arbitrageurs swoop in and close the gap.
So human reaction time is way too slow.
Human latency makes it impossible to manually execute these trades. You'd never click fast enough. So the Aurum AI is designed to constantly monitor the mempool and liquidity pool states across all these different DEXs.
It's doing all the math in the background.
Exactly. It's calculating the spread, factoring in the Polygon gas fees we talked about, accounting for slippage, and determining if the net profit is strictly positive before it does anything.
And if it is positive, it triggers step 2, flash loan execution. It instantly requests a flash loan from AAVE for the maximum optimal amount.
Because the spread is often just fractions of a percent, right? So
Yeah.
the only way to generate meaningful absolute profit is with massive leverage.
Right, you don't use your own $1,000 to make a 0.1% profit. That's, what, $1?
Nobody's getting rich off a dollar. The AI uses a flash loan to borrow $10 million from AAVE, uses that massive capital to exploit the 0.1% spread, and generates $10,000 in an instant.
That is insane, which flows directly into step 3, instant trade execution. The smart contract automatically buys the undervalued asset on the first exchange and immediately sells it on the second exchange.
Yes.
Then step 4, loan repayment. The initial $10 million plus AAVE's tiny flash loan fee is routed back to the AAVE protocol within the exact same block.
The atomicity is the key here. The smart contract validates all these steps as a single package transaction.
So what happens if something goes wrong? Like if the AI executes the buy, but the price on the second exchange shifts before the sell can occur, meaning the trade would actually lose money.
The smart contract simply reverts the entire state.
The time machine effect.
Precisely. The loan is canceled as if it was never requested in the first place. The only cost incurred is the nominal Polygon gas fee for the failed transaction attempt, which is basically nothing. There is zero capital liquidation risk.
Wow. And if the trade is successful, we hit the final step. Step 5, profit realization. The remaining yield is automatically credited to the user's wallet.
It's a closed loop.
Okay, hearing this mechanics breakdown, I mean, this is high-level Wall Street hedge fund technology. You're talking about algorithmic mempool scanning, atomic smart contract execution, and millions of dollars of uncollateralized leverage.
It is extremely advanced.
Right. Yet the entire value proposition of Aurum is that they have packaged this highly complex backend into a retail-friendly interface.
Which is the holy grail of crypto, really. The user experience is the primary bottleneck in DeFi adoption. If users have to manually configure smart contract parameters or, set up their own RPC nodes to route flash loans, your target market shrinks to a few thousand hardcore developers.
Normal people aren't going to do that.
No. Aurum's strategy is abstraction. They handle the complex routing and execution on the back end. The user simply holds the permission key.
And the sources outline a 5-step onboarding process that really illustrates this abstraction. It's designed to be simple. First, you purchase the Aurum token. Second, you use those tokens to buy an NFT license.
Right.
But let's pause on the NFT aspect for a second. Using an NFT as a software license is a pretty significant paradigm shift from traditional Web 2 SaaS models.
It completely changes the ownership dynamic.
Because in a traditional software model, like you pay a monthly fee, you get a login credential that's stored on some centralized AWS server, and the company can just revoke your access at their discretion. They own your account.
Exactly. But a non-fungible token changes the custody of the access rights. When you purchase the Aurum license, the NFT is minted directly into your decentralized wallet. It acts as an irrefutable, cryptographically secure access key.
So you aren't logging into a centralized server.
No, your wallet is interacting directly with the Aurum smart contract. If your wallet holds the NFT, the protocol must grant you access. It mathematically has to. It completely removes the centralized kill switch.
That is a massive difference, which leads directly into the 3rd step, connecting that secure wallet to the Aurum platform.
Very standard Web3 process.
Then step 4, the documents call this Activate Aurum Flash for daily yields. They describe it as putting the system on automated mode. And for me, here's where it gets really interesting because the user isn't actually trading. You aren't sitting at your desk selecting the assets, you aren't looking at charts to define the spread, and you certainly aren't coding the flash loan logic.
You are effectively delegating your license's trading bandwidth to the AI. By toggling that automated mode, you grant the smart contract permission to route the AI's globally generated flash loan profits directly to your specific wallet address.
Proportional to your license tier, I assume.
Exactly. The algorithm operates autonomously. It entirely removes human emotion, reaction latency, and technical error from the execution layer.
And the final step is just receiving those yields directly. The profits from these microscopic arbitrage trades are aggregated and pushed to the connected wallet seamlessly.
It's true passive income in that sense.
But this entire process hinges on the specific NFT license you hold, right? Because the platform doesn't just offer one universal access key. They have segmented their user base through a heavily tiered license structure.
And that tiering system is a critical resource management tool for them. The AI has finite computational bandwidth, and the DX liquidity pools have finite depth.
Meaning there's only so much money to be made in a single trade.
Right. If every single user had unlimited access to the algorithm's maximum flash loan capabilities, the system would instantly saturate the arbitrage spreads. The returns would plummet to zero for everyone. So the licenses throttle the capital deployment.
Okay, let's look at those tiers. The documentation outlines 8 specific tiers. It scales from a basic starter package all the way up to a VIP institutional level. Now, I'm not going to read a giant spreadsheet over the audio, but the core mechanics of these tiers revolve around 2 vital metrics: the loan margin and the limit.
Yes, those are the 2 key variables you need to understand.
So, for context, the starter tier costs $100. It grants a loan margin of $150 with a limit of 200%. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the VIP tier. That costs $25,000, grants a massive loan margin of $75,000, and has a limit of 350%.
Quite a spread.
Yeah. So let's define these metrics, starting with loan margin. How exactly does the AI interpret the difference between a $150 margin and a $75,000 margin?
Think of the loan margin as the capital leash you place on the AI. When the algorithm spots an arbitrage spread, the absolute profit it can extract is heavily dependent on the volume of the trade.
Because the percentage is fixed.
Right. If you only hold the starter license, the smart contract restricts the AI to executing flash loans within that $150 parameter for your specific account allocation.
Yeah.
It can only extract micro profits for you.
Because, 1% of $150 is $1.50.
Exactly. But if you hold the VIP license, you are authorizing the AI to deploy up to $75,000 of flash loan capital per atomic execution.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that larger capital base allows the algorithm to extract significantly larger nominal profits from the exact same percentage spread in the market. The cost of the license directly correlates to the volume of leverage the AI is permitted to utilize on your behalf.
So you are literally paying for algorithmic bandwidth. You're buying a bigger shovel.
That's a great way to put it.
Now let's look at the limit metric. The starter pack has a 200% limit, meaning it caps out at $200 of generated yield since you paid $100. The VIP pack has a 350% limit. This implies these NFTs are not lifetime access passive.
They are not. They are performance-capped contracts.
Yeah.
And this is actually vital for the long-term sustainability of the protocol's tokenomics.
Why is that?
Well, think about what happens if a user pays $100 once and receives perpetual infinite yield from the AI's efforts forever.
The protocol would eventually bleed out.
Exactly. The protocol's value extraction would eventually outpace its value creation. By enforcing a hard life cycle cap, say 200%, the smart contract dictates that once the AI has successfully generated double your initial entry cost, the utility of that specific NFT expires.
It fulfills its mandate and just shuts down.
Precisely. To continue capturing yield from the AI's arbitrage after that point, the user must re-enter the ecosystem by purchasing a completely new license.
Which creates a forced cyclical economy.
Yes, it does.
And wait, if we loop this back to the tokenomics we discussed earlier, every time a user's license expires, and they use a portion of their profits to buy a new one, they have to pay in Aurum tokens.
Yes.
And 50% of those tokens go straight to the burn address.
It is an aggressive, synchronized feedback loop. The AI generates the yield hits the license limit, the user buys a new license to continue earning, and the protocol burns half the purchase, driving further scarcity into the token.
The utility actively consumes the supply.
It really is an elegant system.
That is a masterclass in decentralized economic design. I mean, they've weaponized the user's desire for passive income into a mechanism that mathematically enforces token deflation.
That's exactly what they've done.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a minute. What if a user doesn't want to deal with NFT life cycles, loan wagons, or AI bandwidth? What if they are just a pure capital allocator who wants to hold the Aurum token and earn a yield on the asset itself without messing with the flash loans?
The ecosystem actually has a solution for that. They've integrated a traditional staking mechanism for exactly that demographic.
Right, staking.
And staking serves a fundamentally different purpose than the active flash loan algorithm. It is the primary stabilization mechanism for the entire network's liquidity.
So looking at the sources, they outline a flexible term structure with daily reward distributions. The yields scale aggressively based on how long you lock your tokens up. So a 1-month lock yields a 2% APY, which is fine. But if you commit to a 12-month lock, the protocol offers a staggering 120% APY.
It's a massive jump.
Okay, my immediate reaction to a 120% APY is skepticism. Deep skepticism. In traditional finance, anything over like 5% is heavily scrutinized. In DeFi, we've seen so many protocols offer massive APYs only to collapse under hyperinflation a month later.
Oh yeah, countless times.
So how does Aurum justify, and more importantly, sustain a 120% payout for a 1-year lock?
Your skepticism is entirely warranted. High APYs are often the canary in the coal mine for unsustainable token emissions. It usually means they're just printing fake money.
Right.
But if we analyze the specific mechanics here, the 120% APY isn't just an arbitrary marketing number. It's actually a calculated premium for removing liquidity from the market.
Okay, break that down.
When a user locks their tokens in a staking contract for a full 365 days, they are taking on massive opportunity cost and volatility risk. They cannot sell, they cannot trade, they cannot react to market downturns. Their hands are tied.
Right, they're trapped for a year.
But for the protocol, having those tokens locked up is incredibly valuable. It removes circulating supply from the open market, creating a hardened floor price that literally cannot be panic sold during a dip.
Oh, I see. So they're paying a premium to guarantee that your tokens cannot be dumped on the market and crash the price.
Yes. And the sustainability of that payout, which is the important part, is tied directly to the token allocation pie chart we reviewed earlier. Remember that 25% chunk?
Ah, the 25% reserve for staking incentives.
Exactly. They aren't infinitely minting new tokens out of thin air to pay these high yields, which is how most of those high APY protocols eventually collapse. They are distributing those rewards from a finite pre-allocated treasury.
That makes a huge difference. Furthermore, the documents emphasize that these staking rewards are distributed daily.
Which is fantastic for the user.
Yeah, that is a massive departure from traditional time-locked assets, where you just lock your money up, cross your fingers for a year, and hope the bank is still solvent at the end of the term.
The daily distribution acts as a trustless verification mechanism. The smart contract actively pushes the fractional yield to the user's wallet every 24 hours.
So you see it working.
Exactly. The user can monitor the health and execution of the protocol in real time. It provides continuous cryptographic proof that the reserves are solvent and the contract is actually executing as programmed. You don't have to blindly trust them for a year.
So what does this all mean when we put the pieces together? We've analyzed the tokenomics, the Polygon infrastructure, the deflationary burn, the programmed price staircase, the atomic flash loan engine, the AI execution, the NFT licenses, and the locked staking. That is a lot of tech.
It's an entire ecosystem, yeah.
To synthesize this massive amount of technical documentation, the core differentiator of the Aurum ecosystem seems to be the synchronization of these distinct pillars. None of these things live in a vacuum.
That is the crucial takeaway for anyone listening. Most DeFi projects isolate these mechanics. You have pure deflationary tokens that rely entirely on meme hype and Twitter culture.
Right, dog coins.
Exactly. Or, on the other end, you have complex arbitrage bots that only elite developers can operate because the UX is terrible. And then you have high-yield staking platforms that collapse due to hyperinflation. They are all fragmented.
But Aurum puts them all in one box.
Aurum's architecture attempts to interconnect these elements into a single self-sustaining engine. The deflationary burn ensures long-term scarcity. The AI-powered flash loans generate the external capital required to sustain user interest without inflating the token. And the underlying blockchain security of AAVE and immutable smart contracts ensures the execution happens without centralized risk.
It's really the transition from manual high-risk DeFi to automated algorithmic DeFi. Users aren't out there hunting for yield across sketchy liquidity pools and getting rug pulled. They are leveraging institutional-grade tools through a simplified, abstracted interface.
Yeah, if we connect this to the broader evolution of decentralized finance, it really represents a shift toward what many are starting to call DeFi 2.0.
DeFi 2.0, I like that.
Well, in the early days, DeFi 1.0, the burden of execution, risk management, and market analysis fell entirely on the retail user. It was highly exclusionary. If you didn't know how to code, you were going to lose your money.
Which kept normal people completely out of the market.
Right. Protocols like Aurum shift that burden away from the human and onto the computational power of artificial intelligence and the deterministic execution of smart contracts.
It fundamentally changes the barrier to entry for advanced financial strategy.
It levels the playing field.
Well, we have thoroughly decoded the architecture of this platform today. For you listening, we've walked through the smart contract logic, the economic models, and the technical claims presented in the Aurum documentation. Now, the execution is in your hands.
Do your own research, as they say.
Exactly. I highly encourage you to dive into the source materials yourself. Look at the specific math behind the token burn, analyze the AI parameters, and determine if this specific intersection of decentralized finance and algorithmic automation aligns with your own strategy.
And as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with a final thought to consider regarding the broader implications of this technology.
Ooh, all right.
Lay it on us.
We've spent this time analyzing how an AI can instantly identify and exploit microscopic price discrepancies across global exchanges, right?
Wow.
As these algorithms become more sophisticated and as liquidity pools deepen across the blockchain, what is the end game for market inefficiency?
What do you mean? If an AI can instantly spot and arbitrage away every single spread with zero latency and zero risk via flash loans, do we eventually reach a state of perfect global market efficiency, where spreads just no longer exist?
Wow.
And if we do, what happens to the traditional financial institutions, the massive legacy banks that have built trillions of dollars in wealth purely by exploiting those exact same spreads manually for the last century?
A perfectly flat, perfectly efficient financial global grid policed entirely by smart contracts. That is a massive paradigm shift to think about.
It changes everything.
The traditional banking world might offer the illusion of clean, simple ledgers, but it really operates on latency and exclusion. The decentralized world might look complex and chaotic from the outside, but once you understand the underlying math and the mechanics of the code, it reveals a level of efficiency that legacy systems simply cannot match.
Could not have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Aurum ecosystem. Keep questioning the architecture, keep digging into the mechanics, and we'll catch you on the next one.